What's up, everybody? Welcome to TrueCoach TV. I'm your host, Sam Pogue. I'm standing here in beautiful Boulder, Colorado, sitting here talking to my homie, the one and the only CEO of OPEX and Big Dogs, Jim Crowell. What's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, Sam. Good to see you, man. I always appreciate the introduction, man. It gets me fired up. So thanks for having me today.
Thank you. I love speaking at events where everybody does the PowerPoint thing, and I try not to use one. And like it's and I'm like, hey, like just to catch people off guard because they're gonna listen, right? But like that was my thing. Is I was like, I mean, as y'all can imagine, I was this kid that probably I got grounded from like going outside. But then I was so annoying inside. My mom was like, fucking go away, right? Like I'm just this all the time. So, but I just feeds my skill set. But, I found ways to do it and I can share it, right? So, amp you up. So it's not, what's up, man? How you doing? You wouldn't be fired up to do that.
No, you got to get some physiology in this whole game too, right?
Yeah. How you holding up now? How's the OPEX family? How's everybody in-house doing? How are all the gyms doing? The coaches, CCP or digital CCP? How are you guys doing?
We're doing pretty well, and context around that, right? Like, our team has done an epically good job with content, and so it's really cool to see what they have put out. We've put out multiple PDFs and videos and, just helping coaches and helping gyms. We've had an ongoing webinar series through anybody in the world can jump onto it. It's been really cool to see people react to that and find some, find a lot of value and comfort in people out there in similar situations. And so that's been really good. Our gyms for virtually virtually everybody. We've got some gyms in New York, obviously, who struggled some more just because they're in kind of the ground zero in the United States. But the gyms are doing very well. They were easily able to go online in no small part because of TrueCoach. And so, we kind of laid out some planning on very quickly how they transition online. Actually, this last week, we rolled out a really big plan about how they can get reopened whenever it's time for them to get reopened. And so we don't have all the answers, but we're just trying to stay in touch with them as a company as best as possible to make sure that they know, they're not on their own on this whole thing. And so that's been really good. And then our team's been great. We got somebody's about to give birth, at the end of this month. And so it's like just kind of all these things you could forget about just being at home, but we stay pretty close together with both teams. And while I can't make the announcement yet, we got some cool stuff coming down the pipeline that I am very excited to make some announcements about soon.
Awesome, man. That's so great to hear. And I'm really excited. I talked to James earlier this morning about fitness and where he thought it was going and, coming out of this, but you coming from such an extensive finance background and assessing markets, as we were kind of talking about before we started, and obviously playing so big in fitness and watching that, and really excited to talk with you about the business side. Where do we need to look at coming out of this? How do we set ourselves up for success? How do we avoid this thing happening again? What happens if it relashes or rehashes or whatever the right term is? And just preparing ourselves, right? And playing business the right way, because business is a game, and this is the game that a lot of coaches aren't blessed with that knowledge. So what's some of the stuff you've been experiencing with your own your coaches and your gyms? Like, did you learn anything unique just from like hearing their own perspective or their own stories that you just weren't ready for?
For sure. Let me zoom out for a second. And, if we're talking about the financial side of fitness, if you're going to make an investment, right, you have to ask yourself, what is my potential upside? And I just mean cash, right? How much money can I make in this business over the life of it? But you also have to ask, what is the likelihood of collapse, or what's the likelihood of going bankrupt? The interesting thing, and I use that word carefully, is that a lot of people in fitness, I mean investors, are seeing investments go to zero right now. And that's not just in tech, right? That's in tech, and that's in brick and mortar facilities. That's in global gyms, just like it's in micro gyms. And so a lot of investors are going to be weary to invest in things that don't have some sort of track record of operational safety in difficult situations. if you look at the tech world, a lot of investors have been saying for a lot of years, well, we want to see profit, right? Like we want you to get profitable. We want you to get profitable. It's like, but you keep investing the biggest money into the companies that grow revenue the fastest. Now, fitness is a little bit different game, but if I just now zoom down into, micro gyms and brick and mortar facilities, a lot of these gyms weren't making much profit and they are now at zero. So the business model of this thing is not good.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't figure out how to solidify your profit on an ongoing basis, because this is a monthly recurring revenue business, if you can't solidify that, and if you went to zero because your service didn't allow you to go online in any capacity, you need to change your model going forward, right? Because I don't think that this virus is going to not be a topic of conversation for a long time. Now, I'm all for, starting a phased, unlocking of countries. I think that we're going to have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
However, without a vaccine, we don't have antibody testing yet either, really, but that seems like that could be soon, right? But without a vaccine, we're 18 plus months away from actually being able to say, okay, we're pretty good. So fitness models, if you don't have a way of going online, and if you don't have a way of making the economics of your business work at half capacity, because you're not going to be allowed to have a full gym, your business model isn't going to work for 2 years. So if you weren't making that much money before, and you think you're just going to come back and open up and everything's going to be good, you're wrong. Because you can't physically put as many people into your gym. So I think that while I think that there's going to be plenty of struggle with businesses trying to get online, you're not going to compete against Peloton. So you better play a slightly different game online than Peloton's playing, right? But what choices do you have? You have to be able to go online. You have to build better relationships than a Peloton or a Mirror or a Tonal builds. Because if you don't, why wouldn't somebody just go do that? And think about it from this angle too. If I can go buy a Peloton bike and have a monthly subscription and I only pay $140 a month for 3 years for that, it's like that looks and feels less expensive than $200 a month for a membership. And the Peloton bike gives me access to all the bells and whistles that they have, as compared to the local gym who's like, hey, let's get on Zoom for a terrible video call today. So I just think it's important to think about that, right? We got 2 years that you're going to have to navigate some version of social distancing and all of these pieces. And the economics of the brick and mortar facility just changed dramatically. So you need to create a business model that allows you to make more money than you would have made previously at half capacity. So that has to be some additional service offerings. That certainly has to be online. At one point, we didn't want our OPEX gyms to promote that they did remote coaching because we were trying to build out the concept of brick and mortar. Now, all of our coaches did some version of remote because why wouldn't they, right? Or if a client moves away or whatever, we didn't care about that. We just didn't want to promote it. You think that we haven't pivoted on that over the last 5 weeks? All of these gyms are like, hey, we do online. It's like, yes, you do, because that's going to be how that's going to be how they survive and then ultimately thrive. Because why not put in 10, 15 more clients that doesn't take up capacity in your gym? Now, our gym owners don't want to be remote coaches, right? Like they want to be in person with people. So I'm not saying it's the only service. It's just part of it. And it allows them to make additional revenue that doesn't cost them dramatically on different, like, don't go buy another facility right now. You know what I mean? Like, don't go rent another spot. Put them online where you can do it. And that allows you to get past the half capacity. I just don't think a lot of owners are thinking about that half capacity and what that does to the economics of the business.
Right. Well, our time is already so sensitive anyway. And I don't think enough coaches do a great job of evaluating the time and hourly that we're really getting.
Yes.
And when they combine all their efforts, right? The time to acquire a consumer, how long it takes to build the content, to go get the content, right? Um, but looking at this now, it's like, okay, oh crap. Like, let's say you got two kids at home and you now are running a remote business, you got employees, and you need to build a secondary offering to build another revenue stream. Like maybe it's a single purchase offering or remote offering or some sort of something in the funnel. How do you evaluate your time as an entrepreneur, and how do you really choose, like, all right, this is the one, and knowing how long I can go down it, because you're going to suck, it's going to get beat up a little bit, right? That you can go down it for a while to like, yep, I can invest this time to have something coming out on the other end of this.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think that the primary question actually needs to start before that. It needs to start by saying, can I make money doing this if I go down this rabbit hole? And I know that so many of us coaches just want to help people, and I love that, but you got to make money doing it. And so you first have to say, is this whole concept viable? So for a lot of brick and mortar, and let's just say that you were making $2,000 a month in your gym, but you're maybe only paying yourself $0 or $1,000 or $2,000 in salary to get to that $2,000 a month in business profit. That's not enough, because that is going to get, let's just assume that the 2,000 gets cut to 0 because you can't have as many clients in there. You now have a very different personal expense structure problem, right? So you better make sure that the base of the business can still support you enough to give you a long enough time period to get this off the ground. Now, Sam, you know me well enough to know it's like, if you think that this is viable and if you think that you're going to do this, I don't give a shit how hard it is. You just have to do it. You know, and I know that that's not like super inspiring, but it's like, you better decide that this is going to be what you need to do in order to win this game right now. And then you better spend every day building it, not once every 2 weeks, not doing a Zoom class and just assuming it's good to go. You have to get feedback from your audience. You have to implement changes based on the feedback that you get. You have to streamline your systems. By no means does that happen overnight. But I'm saying in one day, you better put on your website that you have this offering. I don't care how shitty the graphic looks day one. You better talk to every single person that has ever been your client in the history of your gym. And I'm saying call them all. And you better then send an email to who doesn't answer the phone, text them again. And you need to get as many people into that offering as you possibly can before you even go public with it. And then you can do all the social media stuff. And then you can improve your landing page online. And then you can improve your email sequence that follows up any opt-ins. And then, of course, every day that you run that offering, you need to improve it. So you need to ask the people who are in the offering, how was this for you? What can we do to make this better? And then you better do it, right? So I think that you can get something up in 2 days, right? But I think it's going to take you 8 weeks to make it a lot better.
Yep.
You know, but you got to get it off the ground. You have to get in this game, and you have to continue to improve it. If you are completely relying on only brick and mortar, you better have a lot of cash in your pocket right now. And some people do. And if you do, you hopefully have the runway to survive this thing and then rebuild the clientele and the profit that you lost, or the potential losses on the books that you have. But I think that's going to take a little while, because you can't put as many people in the gym.
Yep.
It's like, think about it from this standpoint, right? Like, and I'm not saying these are bad models at all. They're great models, but you know, Orange Theory and F45, like those types of models were built on the concept of maximizing the number of people in the gym, right? Yeah, you got to do that, right? Like, let's assume that you now have half that many people. Well, and keep in mind, I know that they're building online, you know, offerings as well. So I'm just saying the in-person part.
Yep.
Theoretically, that would cost you half of your revenue every month. And we all know, right? Like, generally speaking, the cost structure of these facilities, you got about 20 to 25% of your revenue. Mind you, this is optimized revenue. You got 25% of it ish in the rent. Hopefully that lowers as your revenue goes up. So let's just call it 20%. You've probably got at least another 20 to 40% in people. So, okay, let's say you drop some of your people because you have no choice. You still have a sizable fixed cost that you've got to get over every month. So think about it. It's like that half of the clients completely erode all profit. It actually could take a business into the red, meaning you're losing money every month fairly quickly, because it's half of your revenue, but you don't make any profit until a certain amount of fixed costs. And I'm not explaining that well enough, but hopefully it came across.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think a lot, if you're in a spot where like none of your in-person switched to whatever digital solution you came up with, you're in a real tough spot, right? No cash in the bank. I wish you the best of luck. The people who, the people who have some money in the bank, or they have a great following, they're going to be okay. It's the gym that, like, all right, they're doing well, they're growing, they've had a steady member base consistently. 50% of their revenue comes from semi-private group fitness, and then 50% comes from in-person individual training. Maybe they have 2 or 3 young coaches underneath of them who are training the majority of those individualized sessions. Okay, you lose all the individual sessions, but then all of your remote stayed, or all of your individual stayed and none of your remote, or none of your group fitness stayed. So you lose 50% of a business, right? It keeps you afloat. What should my mindset be as an owner, right? Like, you just lost 50% of your revenue. What the, holy shit. Okay. All right. You're weathering the storm, right? You're not pumping money into the system on your own, but you're not it's scary. But if we're looking at the future, where should my head be at? What should I be looking at as an owner, as an operator, as a business owner, kind of going forward?
Yeah, again, I'm going to go to an investment idea here and say you need to understand if this is viable or not before you make another investment into your business.
Yeah.
So what I don't want to see people do is to just throw a heck of a lot of their own money into a model that they really haven't thought out at all. Okay. And if you're ahead of me right now in this conversation, you're thinking, well, does he mean shut down? Yes, I actually do, as opposed to putting a significant amount more of your money into something that likely is not going to be viable for 2 years. You could go make a lot more money doing something else. And I know this isn't only about money. I'm talking about money to eat and pay the rent, right? So you have to make sure that your new model is at least theoretically viable. You can never know for sure, right? There's no certainty, but you have to at least run through that and write a full business plan out so that you can say to yourself as the investor, do I want to invest my money into this new business? Yes or no? You spent enough time thinking about why it should or shouldn't work, and you fix some of the little discrepancies maybe that would have gotten in your way had you not done that work. Once you do the work, I really think it's about building the daily habits of making it work. And it goes back to what I said before, which is that get the offering up. And then once it's up, fix it every day, right? And figure it out every single day. What I see in the micro gym industry, particularly non-franchised gym owners, is that they blink their eyes and it's 3 months later and they haven't improved anything. They just keep showing up, right? And so if I'm trying to figure out, okay, half my business is gone, I need to say, okay, if I'm going to go online in some capacity, how am I going to do it? How am I going to make money? How am I going to deliver a great service that has a low enough barrier to entry where my clients could come back? Because think about this, right? Let's change the perspective for 1 second on what's happened. A lot of gyms went online to serve their existing client bases. They're not getting a significant number of new people into their services. They're just serving their existing ones. So what I'm saying in terms of you have to understand if this is viable, if your existing clients who already trust you are churning out of this online system and you haven't brought in any significant number of new people, I'm telling you at the moment, that is not viable. It's not, right? So it's like, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to keep people retained in this online model, and you're going to have to figure out what can attract people to it. Okay, so you're going to have to do the same stuff that you were doing in brick and mortar, but it's going to be online. Is that going to be hard? Yes, but what choice do you have? So it's just really important for people to kind of to make that decision in their head and say, is it viable? If it is, I'm going to be a freaking warrior until I figure out what the offering is to get people in and how I retain them on a daily basis. And I know that that doesn't give absolute specifics, but there are so many different people and different models listening to this that I think they can take their, whether it's personal training or group training, or I want to do one-to-one remote coaching versus templated programs. Like, you got to ask yourself if it's viable based on the economics of it. So if you've got 100 clients and you're trying to sell templated programs, right? It's like, are you an influencer? Like, do you have an e-commerce system in play? If you can't put those things in play, it's going to be harder. Is it non-viable? I don't know, but you're going to have to figure out, how do I resell this thing about every 4 to 8 weeks? Because that's how you make money in templates, right? You ultimately go from template to challenge, and challenge to, you know, different challenge, and then another online program. It's like, hey, and the people that do it well, they're incredibly talented at what they do, right? But for the micro gym owner who hasn't really wanted to market in the past, that's not a game that you probably want to play.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, immediately when you think about that, like, I'm thinking of, you know, Marcus Philly right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, on top of his knowledge of being a coach, I mean, the dude's built like a fucking Greek statue, right? Like, into the long blonde dreadlocks. Like, I don't even know Marcus personally, but like he has all the components, and they market really well. His team markets really well. And they market that whole thing. And that's a different game than a lot of coaches really want to play in that online space.
Well, and think, I know Marcus really well, so I've known him for a lot of years, and I got a lot of respect for Marcus. Not only does he have his own following online, which, by the way, his marketing person is Satya Khan. She's fantastic. You know, so they've built up a huge social following, but you got to remember what Marcus's structure is, right? Like, he has functional bodybuilding and awakened training series, and then the products that kind of underlie those things. But he then has one-to-one remote coaching that feeds from the funnel of the clients who are excited about what they got from awakened training series, etc. And he owns an OPEX gym. So he's got different models that he has teams helping him build those things. Now, Marcus does a lot of work, right? Like, he's over top of all these different things, and, you know, but that's what it takes to succeed at the Marcus level, right? And I think a lot of people, yes, he looks like a Greek god, and hopefully Marcus hears this at some point and I get a little bonus points for saying it, but Marcus has worked his ass off to build out that kind of a following. And think about it, like, every time I get on Instagram, I see either Marcus or Functional Bodybuilding or Revival or somebody who's part of that ecosystem posting. That amount of consistency is hard. So I think, you know, local gym owners, et cetera, trying to go online, take some cues from that. You're not going to make it look as good, right? There's no way, because Marcus has a team that's doing that with him. But you got to be as consistent as those platforms that you admire, because that's why you admire them. You keep seeing them and seeing them and seeing them, and you like the branding, and you like the colors, and you like the information that they have. You know, that's like our coaches who come into OPEX, right? They're like, gosh, like, you guys, you just sound smart. I'm like, you've just been looking at infographics saying, like, assess, don't guess for the last 2 years, right? You know, we think that it's so commonplace, but we've never missed a beat on consistency. We just keep putting out, you know, ideas that challenge and support coaches. And these micro gym owners need to do that at a local level. You have to develop that type of rapport with your local client base, because they want to trust somebody, and they have a better opportunity of trusting you because you're local than some, you know, global fitness company. Right? So it's like, don't go online and try to reach the whole world.
Nope.
Go online and reach your you know, your area, your radius of 12 miles, right? Because, and we're, for OPEX gyms, we're calling this onboarding, we're calling it a digital onboarding. So we're not even calling it remote coaching per se. We're saying that you're going to come in, we're going to start you remotely, we'll assess you, we'll consult you, and then when our gym opens, you got a spot to train. And they're like, oh, that sounds great. You know, so we're not pulling a fast one on them. We're just giving them a great service that gets them started today, gets them connected to a coach. And then when the gym opens back up, and they, by the way, the gym and the client feel safe to go back into the gym, they're great. The product doesn't shift though. They're getting their program through TrueCoach. They're having a monthly consult. They're getting nutrition and lifestyle. It's like, okay, I can see how that model is going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, you know, you really looked at the idea of building out the value of what, you know, what works for your business, right? Like, you know, really making sure that we're going down the same rabbit hole. And guys, did you notice that I asked him the same question twice, in one from a coaching standpoint, and then one I just used owner a little bit more and operator, but his answer was really the same, right? It's still looking at, I mean, I was like, oh man, it's viable, right? Like you have to assess, and we have to look at what's working and what works for us. And, you know, I love the idea that, you know, don't try to market at Marcus's level, but like there's beauty in being small, right? Like if you're in a community setting, right? Like you're not in like downtown LA, right? Not that you can't be that, but like there's beauty in being the community. I grew up in like a 17,000 person town, right? Like you being like a community person, like there's a, you know, there's something big about that. So you don't have to have a 20,000 person million following. Like if you're just the person that every kid goes to when they want to go to start lifting weights, like, oh shit, that's a very different story.
When
right?
I go back to the point I made a little bit earlier about reaching out to all of your former people.
Yes.
It's like, you know, how many clients do you need to make the same amount of revenue online? Let's just say it's 50, right? You got to go get 50 people. If you've been keeping track of all the people that you've spoken to over the last 4 or 5 years as a gym owner or a coach, call them all.
Oh man.
Call them all. And you know, like what's the worst that happens? They don't want to take your call, or they answer and they're not interested. Great. I'll just send you the newsletter from here on out. And, you know, it's like, what? Okay. They don't like you, or they opt out. Who gives a shit? I want 50 clients. That's what I need to win. And so I need to figure out what is going to be the story I'm going to tell myself that's going to make me feel awesome about calling these people. So if you're a little bit nervous about doing something like that, let me inject something into your brain for a second. If you call those people and they start to get healthier now, they'll be less likely to be massively hurt by the virus. It's like, ooh, that could make you feel good about calling somebody or spending the time to do it. How about if they keep getting healthier, they might not have the same amount of fear around the virus moving forward. That drops stress levels, that makes them healthier, that makes them happier. It's like, ooh, that, you know, it's like start to put those kind of stories into what you decide to do or not. I'm just telling you that at the end of the day, if you want to win on the business side, you have to do it. And if you don't want to do it, you're going to lose, you know, or our gyms are going to beat you, or Marcus's, or who, you know, somebody's going to beat you if you choose not to do those things. But it doesn't have to be super complex. Like a lot of people go deer in the headlights. I'm like, you don't need to win on social. Call everybody you know. And they're like, call? I'm like, yes, pick up your phone and call them, right? And it's just, it's mind-blowing. People's like, but social. It's like, oh, get your shit off social for a second. And yes, I'm all about social media, but you have to actually build a relationship with these people. And the people you've already built a relationship with are the most likely to try this new offering.
It would be so much fun. Obviously we couldn't do this, but like if we could make every coach do door-to-door Xerox sales, right? Like they used to, like, oh my God, walk into a commercial park that they say no soliciting and drive up a conversation and sell a copier, right? Like you get good at doing this, and like or phone sales, telemarketing, right? Like I do 120 cold calls in a day. And it's like, you get good at it. Right? Or you just suck less at it, I guess is really what the answer is. But like, it's a really valuable skill, like to now have phone skills, right? And communicate, like it's key. And
it's interesting. I see a lot of coaches that on the surface present very confident, but then you put them into something that they don't have either an education in, or they don't have a lot of experience in. And they might play it off like, oh, that's not going to help me, or blah, blah, blah. It's like, but you want to sell more, right? Like
Right.
you want to have more clients, right? It's like, oh yeah, it's like, but like I got this other thing set up, and clearly for a lot of them, not all of them, and by the way, this
Hmm.
is male and female,
Yep.
you have to get to the root of why you're choosing not to do those things that are going to benefit you.
Yeah.
This is so rampant in the micro gym community right now. They're not getting out into the community right now. Yes, that's via the phone, via Zoom, via social media, via your website. You have to get out there and build relationships. And again, it's because you don't want to play the same game as Peloton because you will lose. Right? Like that's like, think about that again. Peloton gives you a top of the line bike,
Top of the
and
line.
right. So, and it's basically a 3-year subscription. Now, notice how I'm putting that perception out there. It's like $140 a month. It's like, I thought a bike was 3,000. It is, except that they're laying it off over a 3-year period. Right. So it's like, it's all perception. And you think Peloton's not going after that hard wiring of people's brains? For sure. For sure. So if you're thinking about, okay, well, I'm a coach and I need to do this service offering, think about the perception of your clients. It's like, okay, I can go to Peloton over here. I can go to Barry's influencer Instagram live over here. I can go to, my local gym over there, or I can sign up for your service. You have to ask, why does your service have more value at a lower barrier of entry than those other services? That's how they'll make a decision. Now, the reason why I love going to the people whom you already know is because they'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Yep.
And so that's why you always start with who you know, because you refine your pitch with people who will give you the benefit of the doubt. Don't go to the public with some half-assed offering that you haven't tried yet. It's like, sell a buddy of yours. If you can't sell your friends, you got to figure something's not working.
Yeah. So when you're starting to look at this, and you brought up, we talked about, understanding the value and how that's going to play into our business, and we're looking at adding a product now, and I know it comes in, it's all the time. How do I price this? How much are you charging? How much are you pricing this? How do you charge? And so when you start, if I don't mind the pricing question if it comes with some good understanding on the back end, right? Of like, okay, let's look at like, how much time are you able to put into this? Right? How much resources do you have? Do you just have a little bit of time to put some like single cell product together that's a 30-day, just that excitement and get you into your brand? Yeah, okay, that's going to look very different in a pricing than a 12-week program that's got modules and learning and follow-up calls. And so that's why people can't just answer how much do you guys price, because everybody offers something entirely different.
Yep.
Do you have a gauge? Do you have a way you explain or help people better gauge for themselves how to maybe look at that number and decide on a number?
Yeah, actually, I commented on somebody in your guys' Facebook group, actually, and that is basically what I believe pricing boils down to when you're at the micro gym level. Like, if you're Amazon and you're pricing stuff, okay, you got some serious algorithms that you're putting out there. But for us peons, right, in the micro gym business, essentially it comes down to kind of a couple of variables. Number one, you have to charge an amount that achieves the goal, which is ultimately profit, because a micro gym is not as scalable as a tech product. You can't speak to 10 million people, meaning speak as in they pay you, in a micro gym. Okay, so you have to figure out, okay, how many clients am I likely going to be able to put into this? And will that allow me a business model that is profitable at a certain period of time? Now, obviously, I'm not saying that this is day one, because you need to build into the number of people who are paying you money. But essentially, the biggest factor in that variable is that you have to say, what does it cost me to service every single member for each month? So let's say that it costs me 1 penny to service a member. Theoretically, to be profitable, I got to charge 2 cents a month. Okay. Now, let's say, what does it really cost? Let's go into brick and mortar, because this is easier for people to visualize. I might need to pay a coach. I don't know. Well, let's just take a remote coaching. Like our coaches make a percentage on their clients each month. So let's say a coach makes 40% on a client. If that client pays $100 a month, the coach makes 40 and the gym makes 60. Okay, so that is what the gym makes. Now you have to be able to service enough people to overcome that fixed cost structure of your rent and all your utilities and your marketing costs or whatever. And that's what I was hitting on before. But if you can't overcome your cost of goods sold, meaning what it costs per each client, you're dead. Okay, so number one variable, you have to charge an amount that allows you to make a profit margin at the gross profit margin level. Okay, the second part is that you have to understand what your willingness to receive is. This is where all the confidence pieces come into play in a huge, huge way. You were in the room, Sam, when we did this at the OPEX CCP immersion. When you start to ask people, what do you believe people should pay you for your service? And let's just call it a monthly, right? A lot of coaches are like, I don't know. Like, I don't really know. And then you say, should they charge you $2,000, a month? And they're like, no, it's too high. It's too high. Should they charge you $12, a month? Oh, no, it's way too low. It's way too low. And you just keep converging that, right? Until you reach a point where you're like, yeah, I'm worth that. And that builds a ton of confidence. And initially, I don't care what that number is, because I want you to build the confidence and the experience and the success with your clients where that number keeps moving up so that you feel more and more confident as you're able to charge more. But coaches so often want to charge a higher amount than they truly believe that they're worth. And they can't close clients because the clients smell it on them that they're like, this guy doesn't think he's worth that much. Like, why would I believe that this person, right? So you got to be willing to receive an amount of money. Actually, I heard a really great story about this too, slight aside. One of the great martial arts instructors used to give training away for free to a bunch of teenagers. And somebody one time asked me, why don't you charge an amount? And he just goes, you couldn't afford me. So it's like, but that's fascinating, right? It's just like, hey, I want to teach these people something. There's no way that I'm going to put this value, right, onto something that they can't pay for. I'm going to do this charity for them. Now, I say charity because a lot of gyms are doing too much charity, but now the third variable is you have to then reconcile the first two pieces with what your market is willing to pay. Now, that, yes, is an economic term, and you can never be completely sure, but you have to say, okay, I've got a town of, let's use, Sam, your childhood experience, 17,000 people, okay? What are they likely to pay for the service that I'm offering? That means that you need to do some research into different similar services. That means that you need to talk to people and ask what they're willing to pay for certain features so that you can figure out what this aggregated product is worth. And then say, okay, I think that they're willing to pay this. I'm willing to receive this, which, by the way, once you get up and running, you're generally willing to receive more than people are willing to pay. You're trying to move both of them up. And I know that I'm going to make a profit margin of blank based on if I can charge that amount. The beautiful thing is that as you get more success stories, as your clients are happier with the service, as you market more, you can actually move people's willingness to pay higher. So these things really start to create a moving target, but essentially you have to think about those three things very clearly and set your pricing that way. And I'll go back to the beginning of our conversation. If the willingness to pay is just too low, or if you can't put a business model out that is potentially profitable, that's an uninvestable scenario, meaning you should not invest in that service, meaning you shouldn't do it. Otherwise, it's charity. And I know a lot of gym owners who have other jobs and they just have a huge passion for their gym, love it, but they're never going to be profitable, right? So it's like, you got to be in it for the right reasons.
Yeah. And, and a lot of coaches, they have a hard time. They want to launch something, they want to do it for free, and they want to try to, get their name out there, yada, yada. And I'm okay with the free model, right? As long as you're getting something back in return, like, hey, this is going to be for 12 weeks. I need before and after photos. Like there has to be, like, you have to put them on the hook for something, right? Like,
yeah, well, I agree with you for certain products.
Certain products,
yeah, because I don't love getting to a one-to-one point for
Oh, no,
free?
no.
Okay. Okay, cool.
No, I'm talking like single purchase, right?
Okay.
Like, yeah. And like, hey, here's a 12-week program from like, there's no customization. Like it's going to be
Okay.
a top of the funnel kind of thing, right? Like I just need, like, did you do well? Did you get some testimonials? Yeah. But like, I look at, you have top of funnel acquisition strategies, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, yada, yada, Pinterest, right? You might have a newsletter or some sort of blog, right? And then you have a low hanging offering, and then you like maybe a moderate offering depending on your business size. And then one-to-one should be a premium offering, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're putting one-to-one attention to someone, like it should reflect that much time, right? And make sure
Yeah.
that they're getting that.
And I think that I want to word this the right way. A lot of people, frankly, who came out of CrossFit, right? Like they weren't in the fitness industry before. And by the way, this is me, right? Like I got into CrossFit. They aren't thinking about what happens over time to a certain type of product or service, right? I don't care what the business model is. Ultimately, economic profit goes lower and lower and lower and lower. Okay, so whether it's remote coaching or whether it's group training or whatever, what happens is the cost structure gets lower, so they charge less so that they can put more people in. Economic profits ultimately get lower and lower and lower, right? Like in the CrossFit scenario, there were just a lot of CrossFits in certain cities and they weren't marketing. Some were, some weren't. And what's happened is, I think, kind of to your point, like you got all these different top of funnel, marketing strategies. Think about OPEX, for example, right? Like we put out a templated program for 12 weeks just to get interest. So why would your 12-week program cost anything, right? Like we would never charge for that, and so there's all of these businesses out there that they're doing it for lead acquisition. They just want email addresses basically. And so if you're charging for that, you have to have a competitive advantage. So I look at some of the online training programs, like, maybe Invictus or, CompTrain or whatever. They have massive brand appeal and they have massive athlete backing, right? Like that is a competitive advantage. Like we're not even talking about the quality of the program yet, right? Like those guys know what they're doing. But the quality is not the quality, but the price and the willingness to pay often comes from the brand that they have created, because that's extremely hard to duplicate, extremely hard. So people who are trying to do these different types of services, I get the idea of free, but at some point, if you don't build some sort of competitive advantage into your business model, you'll always have to be free, because bigger players like us or whoever else are just going to give it away because we don't think that it has any value. Or sorry, it has an email address value. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and understand, and playing to who you're reaching, right? And this is, we can go back, we're into the story arc side where it's like, hey, what's the story that you're selling? What's the value that you're offering? Does the offering line up with the story that you're telling? And does everything merge together? And making sure that it matches the value. Did you put the amount of value into that product that you're going to charge that people are going to pay? Because price is a factor of value. And, we want you guys just to hear these things coming from different angles. It's a way for us to be able to share, like, okay, here's a way to approach and think about this problem. That's our job here. And hoping you hear it, maybe I ask a question a certain way that's how you try to ask the question. You just didn't know how. Or Jim says something and they're like, oh yeah, that's targeting me. That's the game of this. So looking at how do we ask questions.
And to go back to pricing as well, keep in mind, I laid out those 3 variables, but you then have to be able to have a conversation with somebody, whether it's through an e-commerce platform or an actual physical conversation, in order to close the deal. Yeah. So, let's say that you technically are worth $300 a month and people are willing to pay $300 a month, which, by the way, we do online coaching through Big Dogs. I know for a fact that people are more than willing to pay $300 for that service. So if you don't think that that's accurate, you're wrong, right? But we also know what our cost structure needs to be versus what we can charge, and we know what we're willing to receive, and da-da-da-da-da. Would we love to charge a lot more? Yeah, and we're always putting in more features and benefits that allow us to move that price point north so that we don't fall into the trap of the race to the bottom, right? But we also know that the economic profit of this model will get lower over time. So we're going to have to keep our cost structure we have to be mindful of our cost structure. We're going to have to constantly be innovating what the service is, what the technology is, i.e. TrueCoach, et cetera, so that we can maintain a profit margin to make the business viable. Every gym that's listening to this, or every coach that's listening to this, needs to keep asking themselves that question, like, what am I doing today? But more so, what am I doing tomorrow? Because all of this remote thing is going to be less profitable each year until something massively innovates, right, and gets out to a bunch of people. But remote coaching right now, you have to be either an influencer, or you have to be connected to a system, or you have to realize that putting in 300 clients is difficult. And one thing I always say about remote coaching, it's freaking easy to get 15 clients. It's so easy to get 15 clients because you at least know 60 clients. And I'm talking, you can get 25% of those people that you know. But if you're talking about building a system that has multiple coaches, that's nicely profitable, that you can grow something, that is very difficult. Can be done for sure, but that's harder. And so you've got to know what you're trying to build. You got to understand what success looks like to you. And then you have to go put those components together. Sorry, I got excited and pulled my wire out, Sam. And you have to recognize if that business is viable, Yeah. So I just keep coming back to it, right? Like we love Warren Buffett, both of us. And like what he talks about is that you have to build a business that can return on the equity in the business. Right. So it's like, if I make a $20,000 investment in my company, I better be able to make, let's call it, if I want to make 20%, I better make $4,000 in profit. But the year after, it's not just off of 20,000, it should be off of 24,000 that I now want to, you know what I mean? So like, you got to be able to make more money, which that's a different conversation, but but it's just, it's important for people to think about this. I think a lot of people got into fitness because they're passionate about it. They want to help people. That's so great, but you have to put it into a model that is viable today and growable into the future.
Yeah, it's tough, guys. I mean, I don't want to sound like it's easy. Like running a gym, it's a game, right? Business is, it's not easy, right? Like you got to play it. There's strategies. You got people trying to take you down, shit happening in the world. Like but you do it because you love it, right? And so I don't want this to scare you. It's our goal to help educate and help share this insight. I want to bring up maybe a harder topic to talk about, but it's something that's important to be said. If you're struggling right now and you're unsure about where you're at, how do you know when it's time to make a big change and maybe shut things down and come back and try to hit round 2 later?
Yeah, that is a tough one because there's a lot of emotion around, am I good enough? Did I fail? I'm of the mindset that you don't fail until you give up on everything, right? So it's like, I think that there are times where you should throw in the towel on one of the ideas that you're trying to build, because you can build something else more effectively that could impact more people. So I think the first part of that is that people need to ask themselves a number of questions, right? And they need to ask themselves, well, what's the worst that happens if I shut this thing down? And then go down the rabbit hole farther and say, ultimately, this would be a process if I was talking one-to-one with somebody on it right now. But ultimately, you got to kind of get to the point of, you need to see that not as a failure, but as a stepping stone to the next thing that you're doing. Because I think so many people in our industry, they feel fearful of being found out or fearful of being looked at as a failure. So if your business isn't working, and I'm literally just talking about profit, right? If you can't make any profit, you weren't making enough profit before, and now you're in a spot where you still have rent to pay, you might not be able to open well for another month or so, then you can only have 50% of the people on the gym floor. If you don't have a great idea to improve those economics, you might just want to look at shutting that thing down. Now, be careful, right? Because you're probably still on the hook for your rent and everything. So I'm not just saying willy-nilly go shut this thing down. But if you don't have a viable model, it's okay to move on to something else. And then maybe, like you said, take another shot at it, down the road. And I'm only saying that because so many people in the gym business need that profit on a monthly basis in order to pay their bills. If you say, hey, I got to make this thing work, I'm going to make it work, I'm going to say, awesome. I'm behind you 100%. Let's talk about what that means. Now you got to go right back to those questions. How is the business model viable? And until you've taken enough time to think about how you're going to make money doing that consistently, and then how you're going to market and sell it and fulfill on it so that people actually stay in your business, you're not there yet. So that's all I'm asking, is to spend enough time to think through how you're going to make the business model viable, and then have some outside feedback, because you're extremely biased towards yourself and you're going to be overconfident just because we're hardwired that way, right? And you got to get some people to give you some tough feedback. I've had a couple of ideas during COVID where I've taken them to some really smart people, and they're like, are you fucking kidding me? You know what I mean? And then like once I have somebody else, come back to me, I'm like, yes, I am kidding you. This was definitely not a real idea that I had, And so it's just funny, right? Because like you get in your head, you're like, yeah, this is going to work. This is going to work. But you're just kind of perpetuating the narrative that you have in your head, and you're really just solidifying the belief that you had. And so that research needs to be factually based, and it also needs to be checked by some outside neutral sources so that you can get some real good Q&A back on whether it's viable or not. And then ultimately you decide, right? Like there's been a lot of great business owners over the years that have been like, fuck you guys, like I'm just going to do what I want. And they were resourceful and they figured out how to make it work. If you're one of those folks, all the power to you, go do it.
Yep. It sounds like I'm hearing you, it sounds like everybody should take a big deep dive into their business right now if they haven't already, and like really assess their business, which is probably your mindset all the time anyway. Yeah. But like, where is everything at? Like, how much time do I put into it? How much money am I putting into it? How much money is that getting out? Like doing an honest assessment of your business and where it's at is probably a great place to start. And then evaluating, all right, what can I realistically take on? What's realistically within the market? Like what's going on in the market? He mentioned research, like take it upon yourself. You got to go put the work in. It doesn't just magically happen. But what, you're also talking about some great, having a dialogue, it sounds like, or executing someone else's system and learning. Right. And that's tough because a lot of coaches don't have that out of the gate. Right. They are that person that are, for a while, they can take a lot of licks on the jaw. Right. And you can run on passion for 2 years. Right. And then after that, it gets real tough and it's real hard to eat passion. Yeah. And, is there a place or a system where they can have like mentorship, learn systems, learn coaching, and like get everything all in one box? Is there a spot for coaches to go that they can get all this information?
Like we all are, I am as biased as they come. So, so that place is OPEX, and, the product is called CCP. We want to make the world value coaches more. That's what we want to do. And so we think that the way that is done is through great coach-client relationships that are built on trust and built on long-term sustainable progress, right? So we're trying to teach our clients how to fish. That's one of the reasons why OPEX gyms had such an easier time going online than many other training, styles, is because our clients, yes, it was a big change for them, but they're like, oh yeah, I understand what these movements are. I can just tweak my program. I'm going to make sure that I'm dialed in on nutrition. No, it's not that easy, but people trust that. And so when we think about what's inside of OPEX and CCP, we're making sure that the coach understands how to build those types of relationships. We're also making sure that they have the goods on the assessment and programming and nutrition side so that they can deliver the right program at the right time to the right person. But our entire program is a one-to-one designed experience so that the coach understands how to work with anybody. Now, we're not saying that we're going to teach you very specifics of like the pitching arm, right, for a baseball player. We're going to teach you the foundational principles of how to coach people and how to make a business out of it. So CCP actually stands for Coach, Client, Professional. So on the coaching side of things, we teach you the principles and what everything means in coaching. We do some basic anatomy and physiology. We teach you how to program, all that good stuff. On the coaching side, we teach you the OPEX method, which is the one-to-one system of walking a client through this entire experience. And then I actually come in, you get to see my mug, teach you how to do all the professional side of things, like building systems, like understanding finances and accounting and marketing and sales and all that good stuff. So I'm extremely biased towards that being the best place to go learn it. But it's helped a lot of coaches over the years. And so we just refined it and put a brand new version out. We are going to launch, a physical book. So we're going to have 4 physical books that are coming out. We're really, really excited about that, just because that's going to be such a tangible thing for people to hold and be able to reference back to. Yeah. So it's been cool. And, I do that with Carl Hardwick and James Fitzgerald, and it's just been an awesome program to build out.
How did you guys just had your first digital immersion? Yeah.
Well, no, we haven't done a digital immersion. We do cohort calls, and we've done those digitally for years. So that was no different for us. But we are talking about how we could try to do an immersion. But I'll tell you what, like, if you've ever tried to do multiple days on Zoom, there's a little bit. I'm not there yet. So I think that the immersion might be. We might wait to have restrictions lifted big enough so that we can be in person, but we've increased our touch points online by a lot in this time.
Mm-hmm. Man, it's like, I feel bad because I do so many of these Zoom calls and like face podcasts and stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to socialize digital Zoom with my friends and family. Like, I'm over it, right? Yeah. Like, I'm so over it, right? I need this. I need to give you a hug, right? Like, it's like, oh, because I'm just burnt out. Much like trainers, like, you're not like trying to go socialize at 7 p.m. Like, you're trying to go home and like chill out. Whereas your buddy's like, let's go have a beers at like Wednesday. And you're like, no, I'm going to be up at 4.
No,
right? That sounds like a terrible idea. Yeah. So no, it's, I'm so pumped that you were able to share such, really good insight. I love always learning from you and how you present information around business. And guys, I want this to be an opportunity for you guys to hear that layer of business and the gym that you don't get. Right. And that's what's special about CCP is you get it. Right. Like, I would say that's one of the bread and I love James. I love everything. But like, one of my favorite pieces, and is the part of finance and business and building out those systems for you guys, because it's the missing link. Right. At one point, like, I love learning how to coach the squat, but like, you're going to learn your way and you're going to kind of do your way. But like, learning this is super, super important. So as we're in a really uncertain time, I just really wanted to give Jim an opportunity to kind of express, hey, where are things at? What should we be thinking about? What should our mindset is? Because I know he's already spent hours on it, and I'm sure he has a spreadsheet or two already built out to process his thought about what he wants to say. So now he's ready to like convey that to the world. So, man, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I know you got a team and a grip of people, that you need to give attention to. So thank you for the time. I always appreciate you.
Let me just hit one thing at the end. I was just thinking about people need to be prepared for this thing to just keep lasting.
Yes.
Right. So I think that, start to think about being ready for a month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. Because there's so much uncertainty, you've got to prepare for longer than you think. And that's all well and good, because if you have a service that can survive that time, then coming out of it will be easy. So I think that get ready for the long haul, not to be negative at all. I just think that will be a better place for people to start wrapping their heads around this thing. But Sam, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's always really fun. And I appreciate doing the Zoom with me too, because that gives me a lot of energy just seeing you, man, on the other side of the screen.
I try to, man. I try to bring it and bring a little bit more than just another conversation. So
I love it.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Have yourself a great day, bud.
All right. You too. Thanks.
Bye.